Siyabonga kakhulu ngobukhona benu namhlanje. Sibonga ukuthi niphume nizodefend umbutho wethu. Sibonga ukuthi niphume nizodefenda i-revolution yethu. Nidefend umzabalazo wethu. Lento yanamuhla ibalulekile kithi sonke. Ngoba sonke besizodefend umzabalazo. Ukuphatha kwe-ANC kuleli lizwe kukhubezela phambili umzabalazo wenkululeko. Ngakho abantu
Good evening to you and a warm welcome back to Galaxy Prime. Thank you so much for staying with us and those who have chosen to be on this channel today. We're coming to you live from our Midrand studios here in Johannesburg. We're live in 44 countries across the continent. This is Galaxy Universal Network. My name is Audrey Chimwanda Twala and I'm here with Sifiso Mahlangu. He is the independent media political editor. That's correct, right? He'll be with me during the program today. As we bring you an exclusive, we get to speak with the former Finance Minister Malusi Gigaba. He's also the former ANC Youth League President. He's also a member of the ANC NEC. He's with us here live in studio today. Sifiso.
Thank you, Audrey. Quite an evening we're going to have. Good evening to you. South Africa and the world, we're live in 44 countries. My name is Sifiso Mahlangu and I'm happy to be a part of this particular conversation tonight. If you haven't followed the Twitter handles, do so right now and follow in the palm of your hand. If you have a cell phone, you can watch this particular interview live. No stone will be left unturned tonight. Mr. Malusi Gigaba is here, former Minister of Finance, Home Affairs. The young lion of Eshowe will speak openly for himself. Young lion, we'll welcome you to the show.
Not so young anymore.
Not so young anymore.
Not so young anymore.
Certainly not so young. But one of the younger ones in the NEC, right?
Not quite. There are many who are now much younger than we are, who've taken up our spaces. We used to be young with Figile, Zizigodwa, Dakota, Pulema. Yeah, but then there are others who've come in who are much younger than us and are representing the younger generations.
Okay. I'm going to address the elephant in the room, and social media is abuzz with the last week of former President Jacob Zuma's administration, where you addressed foreign media, saying that if Zuma does not resign, you will relieve him of his duties. Now, he was your political principal at the time, and you were known to be very close, both from KZN. He had entrusted you with a very senior office. By the way, the Department of Finance, you know, a very particular department. Not anybody becomes a Minister of Finance. Do you regret your comments on CNN?
I think the point I was making is that the NEC had taken a particular decision. And the question was, what happens if he doesn't step down? And my response was, I think President Zuma will do the right thing.
Okay, the right thing at the point.
The NEC had taken a decision, and I know that President Zuma, like President Mbeki before him, or any other, even after them, would not act in defiance of the decision of the NEC. Whether the decision is right or wrong, as discipline cadres, whatever our feelings about particular positions that are taken by the leadership of the organization, we comply with them, no matter how bitter the pill or difficult the decision. I'm sure when we took the same decision about President Mbeki, it was a difficult moment for him personally, as well as for the organization as a whole. And the same applied with President Zuma. I think many of us who had worked with him and had grown up under him, were close to him, felt a great deal of difficulty swallowing that decision observing those moments and living through those episodes. But the organization had taken that decision, and I think they are not the only ones who've gone through those moments. I went through the same moment as well in 2018. Whatever my feelings were, whatever my feelings are even now, but the decision had been made, it had to be complied with, and the strength of the ANC is in the ability of its leaders, no matter how big and strong, to subject themselves to the decisions of the organization.
Well, no one can deny that you're certainly articulate and you've got very strong views and strong values. You were the ANC Youth League, and of course that's not a small order. People who were ANC Youth League presidents usually become something in our society. We've known that. When you reflect on the ANC leading up to NASREC in 2017, and you look at the ANC today, Sunday Stories, Ms. Kusela Diko, COVID-19, corruption, a new type of capture erupting in this country, independent power producers, Eskom paying 5 billion rand to strange white companies. Do you think that things are certainly going wrong in the ANC?
So things are certainly going wrong in government and in society. I think those things do not necessarily reflect what's going on in the ANC. I think the ANC is strong. The ANC is fighting very seriously to maintain and retain its mass support base, to rebuild, renew the organization, and ensure that ideologically and politically it renews itself and repositions itself in a way that resonates with the overwhelming majority of the ordinary people in our country. There are certainly things which are happening in government and society generally which are quite wrong. Obviously, I wouldn't want to talk about things about which I don't have much information and which I think will still be subject for review at another stage. All I can say is that we've tended in our country to use the concept of corruption as a Trojan horse to fight against progressive policies and against radical economic transformation, to delegitimize the genuine interests and aspirations of the black majority and Africans in particular, to present black people and Africans in particular as inherently corrupt, and that the only way to deal with corruption is to replace us with white executives in the corporate and in state-owned companies. The only problem with this narrative is that somebody will ultimately take it a step further to its logical conclusion and say that the ANC itself needs to be replaced, because insofar as it is an African nationalist organization, because that's what we are. We're not an ANC, just the acronym. We're not an African National Congress because we chose, through pulling a name from the head among many other available names. We made a conscious choice to become an African National Congress. It means something. But somebody will take it to a logical conclusion and say that, no, the ANC itself, to the extent that it represents these Africans who are dubbed as corrupt, incompetent, inept, must therefore be replaced, or it must change character to become this organization that represents those who are said to be the fixers of South African society. But the fact of the matter is that South African society can't be in a mess socially and economically because of white supremacy, and then we turn back to white supremacy to solve the problems that our country is facing. It's impossible.
I want to take you back to the year 2018 that you've already alluded to, that it was a bit of a tough time for you, where we then saw you resigning from your position, others saying that perhaps you were pushed to resign. It wasn't necessarily a voluntary decision from yourself. Sfiso asked you if you perhaps regret not what you said on CNN. You've been on record as saying you did not receive the support that you felt you deserved from the ANC. You describe yourselves as a collective and not as an individual within the ANC. We saw you going through the court case with the Fireblade story, where it was ruled that you had lied about you approving that. Would you still stand by that stance now, to say you could have used a bit of support from the ANC?
Certainly I could have used a bit of support. Look, in the first instance, the Fireblade issue was not a Home Affairs issue. You know, it was naturally a matter between the applicants and the owners of the property, which is Dinel, together with AXA, therefore the Department of Transport. Home Affairs was a supplier of the service at the Fireblade, not the owner of the property, the Fireblade. There had been a court decision which had said that Fireblade cannot operate at that facility, which was a ruling in favor of Dinel against the applicants. Now, all of a sudden, the matter turns from being a matter between Fireblade and AXA vis-a-vis Dinel into a matter of Fireblade versus Home Affairs, and then immediately becomes a matter between Fireblade and Malusi Gigaba. How did all of this happen? At what point did the matter get to becoming a personal matter? And as I have said before, there are other issues which still need to be probed as to the relevance of the Public Finance Management Act, because ultimately ministers do not approve any deals, tenders, do not sign contracts, they don't enter into contracts, because ministers are executive authorities and not accounting officers. If the accounting officer of Home Affairs at the time, and the accounting officer of AXA, and the accounting officer of Dinel, or the Department of Transport, had not approved and entered into contract with the applicants, how did the minister become the one responsible for something over which the minister had no power? And all of these questions were not being probed. Nobody was asking these questions. Everybody got swept into this narrative that Malusi had lied under oath, when Malusi would say, Malusi queries the so-called minutes of January 2016, because Malusi insists that in October 2016, he actually wrote an official letter. The minutes of January 2016 cannot be regarded as a valid approval, because they were not signed jointly by the parties in dispute. But the letter of October 2016 was now the ultimate letter, official letter, in an official letterhead with bearing the signature of the executive authority, saying that because of the failure to comply with the following prescripts of the law, the department is unable to approve this. But this was after we had been engaging and trying to find an amicable solution, including writing to various departments, seeking their co-authorization for this thing. So it was quite a messy affair. I still believe that there was a vicious political vendetta against me, which came on all fronts. It was not only the Fireblade issue, because it also surprised me when the Portfolio Committee of Home Affairs said it believes there was a contract sitting on my table, which had been signed by me, and they did not ask for proof of this contract, for sight of the contract, and did not ask how was this contract entered into? They didn't ask, but Minister, you had no power to enter into such a contract. But they believed, because if the department enters into contracts with any bidders for tenders or for services, the Director General does not send the contract to the minister, either for signature, approval, or for sight as reference. They don't. It's a matter between the department and the applicant. It doesn't go to the minister. How was this expected? How did anybody just willy-nilly agree without any questioning that actually the minister was responsible for this thing? And I think, as I've said, that there will come a day someday, hopefully in the near future, where all of these things will come under review, and all of those responsible, wherever they are in our society, whatever position they hold, will be made to account for their
this vendetta that you speak of against you. But do you appreciate?
I don't think they need to account for the vendetta against me.
Do you harbor any ill feelings?
No, I don't harbor any ill feelings. I just want the truth to come out. As I have said, among others, when I became Minister of Home Affairs, I just months after I became Minister, as we were dealing with this, I was made aware that there had been an approval, a letter written from the ANC head office by an administrator of the ANC approving the fire blade, completely without the knowledge of the Department of Home Affairs, the DG, as well as myself. And there also had been an approval by a junior official, a junior immigration officer who was working for the Department of Home Affairs, who had approved this without the DG of Home Affairs being made aware, let alone the minister. The minister is not a party to signing contracts and entering into agreements. So the people responsible will still have to answer for this and explain their conduct in the whole thing. But personal vendetta, no. I hold none. I'm a politician. I know that personal vendettas are there.
Who might have performed these acts against you? I hasten to say you're not the only one who claims that there are vendettas against him. There is a third hand, or there is an applied mechanic to bring you down. The media certainly was not on your side leading up to 2018. No, they called you the Gupta boy, the Gupta stooge, you know, the one who carried the parcels. You and journalist Reddy Direko really had it out on the social platforms. You threatened to take her to court. Then there was that infamous video, though that is a personal line. But it hasn't been smooth sailing for you. Neither has it been for Batabile Dlamini, for Nomvula Mokunyane, for your political principal, former President Jacob Zuma. Would you, Mr. Gigaba, tonight, perhaps take us into your confidence? Who are these agents that were set to destroy you? A young leader of the ANC, today you claim there are people against you. Who are those people?
Look, I can't point to anyone in particular. I can't point to anyone in particular. All I can say is there are forces out in our society hell-bent on imposing on South African society a neo-colonial project to ensure the continued dominance in the South African economy of the colonial ruling class, white monopoly capital, that was developed during the apartheid colonial system, that did not lose their stranglehold over the economy when the transition took place, that remains today as they were prior to the democratic transition, the ruling class of our society. They are hell-bent not only on strengthening their stranglehold over the economy, but also on imposing their political perspective as the outlook of the country as a whole. And in that effort, they try to get rid of anybody who is independent of them, who doesn't think the way they do, who doesn't believe in what they stand for, whom they view as a threat and an obstacle to their pursuit of the agenda which they seek to achieve. The vendetta against me from the media, starting in 2017, well, not starting in 2017, it intensified in 2017. As some people have told me, you shouldn't have accepted your appointment as Minister of Finance. And the question I've asked is why? I accepted being being Deputy Minister of Home Affairs. Nobody said I shouldn't have. I accepted being Minister of Public Enterprises in 2010. Nobody said to me I shouldn't have. I accepted being Minister of Home Affairs in 2014. Nobody had a problem. But come this position of finance, who is it reserved for? Why should it be that there is somebody who is born or was born to be finance minister who must be accepted not by the political principal who sets up cabinet and has power to reshuffle it without providing reasons to the country, but then suddenly you are told that no, you shouldn't have accepted this, and for this you have an eternal crime that will haunt you for as long as you live, whatever you do. I think that becomes a problem in our society. It's a conversation we need to have, because you cannot have a particular group of people sitting somewhere in Stellenbosch or wherever in Sentin who are the ones who are deciding who needs to be who needs to be ministers, particularly in the economic sector in South Africa, most especially in finance and the national treasury. That becomes an enormous problem, because again, they will take this to the next logical conclusion and try to appoint for us a leadership. You can't have a group of people who are unelected because they command all the money in the world, have influence in the media, because they own all the propaganda machinery in the country. Therefore, they have the exclusive right, the unfettered power to now decide who should become minister of this, that, and the other, who should become the leader of our society. Ultimately, as Anton Lembede and the ANC Youth League in 1944 would have said, the leadership of the African people should come out of their own loins. It's not a racist issue. It's about our people as the majority in our society having the power to decide who should lead them as the majority. And that, to me, is the only logical direction that our country should take. Otherwise, we're headed for a disaster, as you can see, that you now have begun to see in state-owned enterprises, particularly, black leadership, black talent being replaced by white talent. To me, the problem is not a narrow nationalist or racist problem. State-owned enterprises and the structures and institutions of the state are the platform where we groom and nurture black talent, because the corporate that remains white and male-dominated will not provide that opportunity to many of these talented young black people to occupy leadership echelons in the corporate sector. So we need the state-owned enterprises, we need the state departments, we need other institutions of the state to provide these opportunities for black talent that otherwise would not be groomed. And therefore, in the notion of a developmental state, which we are not as South Africa, you have that continued interface. If you look at developmental states in Southeast Asia, even in France and elsewhere, you have this interface between corporate leadership and state leadership at administration level, at bureaucratic level. And that is the direction we need to take. But if we don't provide opportunities for black talent in state-owned enterprises, and create this impression that SOEs are weak because of corruption caused by black managers, therefore to fix them, replace them with white managers, then you are saying to our people that there is something inherently wrong in being
Here's
black.
a link to your answer. And I want to pose this as a question. If you're saying there's something inherently wrong with the way society views black talent, and someone is sitting there, perhaps in Sandton or Stellenbosch, and those people want to elect ANC leadership and appoint people, particular individuals, for the position of finance minister, then I must ask Mr. Gigaba, do you think that the 2017 54th National Elective Conference of the ANC was funded and bought by those individuals you're stating now?
Look, you know, if you follow that logic, if you use this logic, or let me rephrase my response. They tried, they played their part. They played their part. I think all of us in the ANC admit that the unprecedented use and deployment of money in 2017 was an eye-opener for all of us, a hard lesson for all members of the ANC, and we need to deal with that challenge and not sink our heads in the sand, because if we did that, you should therefore expect that in 2022 the problem is going to magnify and in the years following thereafter. So what we need to do is to re-establish the culture of the ANC. So yes, money did play a part, but ultimately I think, as you would hear, members of the ANC, what's the English word? Members of the ANC badlala umlabalaba, you know, and persuaded.
There was racketeering or
there is
laundering
not
money
racketeering,
gains or financial gains.
No. The conference was legitimate. The conference was legitimate, and the outcome it produced, no matter how you may feel about it, it was an outcome of members of the ANC acting consciously. The majority thought they were right, the minority thought they were not. They were wrong, but ultimately, the conference produced the outcome it did. The point that I'm making is that the role of money in 2017 in the provincial conferences, regional conferences, branch AGMs prior, and sometimes even after, has caused all of us to be extremely worried about the future of the ANC and the future of our country. Ultimately, the decision about who should lead the ANC and who should lead our society must rest with members of, let me talk about the ANC. It must rest with members of the ANC acting consciously to elect a leadership that they believe out of their conscience will represent the best outcomes that the ANC seeks, and that will be able to implement the resolutions adopted by the conference.
On that note, Audrey, I think we must take a break.
We should take a breather, definitely.
We're going to delve into Nasrec a little bit further after the break.
But soon after this, we need to talk about your thoughts with regards to the present ANC Youth League, where you think where it is headed. We've seen the issues that have come, you know, with the Youth League, and yourself being lauded as a young lion. You say as we started the program, your ambitions going forward, what you've been up to since the last time that we saw you. Would like to speak about that as well. You at home are welcome to join in the conversation. Our social media platforms are at GUN_TV_. That's our Twitter handle. Our Facebook page is live as we speak. We're also live on channel 500 on Starsat. This is Galaxy Universal Network. We'll be back in a moment. Just stay with us.
Quite excited about it. Excited about what you said about higher education. I would have wished for more, but I was excited about it. I was happy also about what you said about agriculture and land reform, because at the end of the day, you know, we can't say to the poor in South Africa that their role is to become recipients of social grants and the social need. People want to make an income. They want to earn their income. They want to work. Therefore, we need to address the structure of the economy to ensure that people are involved in productive economic activity. And that's what this speech tonight addressed. And so I was very excited about it.
Feel the heat.
I love Adam Selman.
The girls are really thin. I think it looks very glamorous from the outside.
The life of a model in New York City.
There is such cool prints. So many.
You know, I'm buying this.
Look at me and all the selfie sort of thing. Honestly, I didn't really know that was actually a job. It just didn't occur to me.
Congratulations.
Feel the excitement. Feel the heat with StarSat.
The power to defeat coronavirus is in our hands. Play your part by following these 5 basic precautions. Regularly wash your hands with soap and water or sanitizer for at least 20 seconds. Maintain a safe distance of at least 1.5 meters from people around you. Wear a cloth mask at all times when in public. Always cough or sneeze into your elbow or tissue. If you're an employer, screen your employees daily for symptoms of COVID-19 and where appropriate, refer for testing. Working together, we can beat the coronavirus. A message from government.
And a warm welcome back to Galaxy Prime. Thank you for staying with us. We're bringing you an exclusive here as we are speaking to the former Finance Minister of South Africa, Malusi Gigaba. He is also the ruling party ANC's NEC member. He is also a former ANC Youth League president. He's joining us in conversation together with us, Viso Mahlangu.
Yeah, it's a conversation indeed. Former Finance Minister, Minister of Public Enterprises, Deputy Minister of Home Affairs, quite a curriculum vitae. We're going to get into that in a minute. We're just sorting out some technical political issues. Before the break, Mr. Malusi Gigaba engaged us on the broad theme of white monopoly capital and what he thinks was endangering him in his position of finance minister. Mr. Gigaba, let's continue the conversation. After leaving your portfolio, reshuffles happen, you find yourself without the black cars, you know, without the fast track on the N1, and you've got to commute like everyone else. Did it feel like a drop from power to you? Did you feel like you had been ordinarized as all of us in society? You had become a mere mortal, you know. We've all seen the videos with you, your wife and my Hlome in the US, you know. Do you feel like a mortal right now?
If being a mortal is not construed as an insult, I feel extremely ordinary. I am excited to be myself. You know, I think at times, because I started, I was in high-profile positions from a very young age. I was elected president of the ANC Youth League at 24 and have lived my life in full view of the nation from then until 2018. It was nice for me to become ordinary again, to not to have to be fast-tracked at a queue, to stand at a queue at the airport, you know, to just live my life and be myself, and at least pretend that the media had no care about me once more. But it's not a drop. It actually is nice. It helps me to what is the word, to press the reset button, to reconnect with myself, to reconnect with a number of comrades with whom I had lost contact.
Because I've been to your government home. It wasn't ordinary at all. I've been to Pretoria East, where I got into a fight with your spokesperson, and another story. But that was no ordinary sitting, no ordinary house.
But you also are a street fighter. You know, the two of you, I should have left you to fight. But anyway, subject for another day. No, but it really has been nice for me to reconnect. It's a humbling moment. You know, you not suddenly, you realize that in actual fact, there's more to life than those high positions. There's more you can do. There's more you can now be I can take my children to school every morning, except if I'm ill. I fetch them from school in the afternoon. I can attend everything that they do at school without the excuse that I'm sitting in parliament or traveling abroad, and I'm home.
And you're home.
And it
I'm
feels
home.
good.
It feels good.
And
you know?
I want to take this question before
okay.
Audrey. I was just thinking as you were speaking, he's home. He has to, now he's not in parliament. He can play dad more often.
Oh yes, of
no
course.
No black cars, you know, no Pretoria East Mansion. Did you sort out your issues with Jacob Zuma? Did you ever
No. I cleared the air.
Or you went and say, Baba man, you know?
No, I
what
did
happened,
go.
happened.
I did go to Baba and spoke to him and explained to him the context of the interview, the whole arrangement, and he understood the issue. I went to his home at Nkandla and spoke to him. But let me just also say, you know, even when I was minister, everybody knows, everybody who worked with me knows that between 7 and 8 in the morning, you would not touch that time. Because that's when I used to say, I'm dropping my kids off at school. Whatever meeting you have, do it after 8. Because before 8, I am with my children, I'm taking them to school. Even if I wasn't going to fetch them. But that moment of sitting in the car with them, taking them to school, is a precious moment. It allows us to connect, we talk, I listen to their stories. I did the same thing with my daughter who is now at varsity. I'm doing the same thing with my boys because I've always believed that I need to be a present father. My father was very present in my life, and I believe that I need to do the same thing with my children. Both my daughter, she needs to know the love of a father, the relationship with a man who respects and loves you genuinely, and my sons, who are going to grow up to be fathers. I need them to know, to learn from me what fatherhood is and what it means, what responsibilities rest on the responsibility. It's not just a title you earn because you've made a child. It's a responsibility that now comes with the child being there. So I enjoy that role, that responsibility, and I would encourage many men in our society, especially during these times when we are faced with gender-based violence. It is said in our society that 1 in 5 women are more likely to not to be abused before they learn how to read and write. It is said that almost every 3 seconds there is a woman being raped or abused. And I think we all as men need to take responsibility not only to protect women and support them and raise our daughters well, but to also raise our boys and learn them and teach them what it means to live alongside empowered women.
Of course. So I want to take you back to 1996, the ANC Youth League president. A lot of young people are looking up to you. Some still do now, as I'm just going through the comments that I'm seeing on our Facebook page now. Some saying, looking at the future ANC president. A lot of people had high hopes for your political career, the trajectory that it would take going forward from you leading the portfolio ministries that you did. And then we see you resigning and you sort of falling off the face of the earth, if I can call it that. What are your plans going forward?
There is a Zulu proverb. I don't know how to translate it in English, but I will try.
Well, let's have it in Zulu, it's fine.
It says, "Ukuhlehla kwenqama akusho ukubaleka kwayo. Kusho ukuthi sadonsa amandla." Basically, it means when a ram, I think that's a male sheep, right? Yes. When a ram retreats, it doesn't mean it's running away. It means it's gathering strength, because that's how they fight. They step back and then they charge. They don't stay charging all the time. So when I stood down in 2018, it was an uncertain period. I mean, I don't want to lie to people and say
it was strategic.
It was strategic. It was I had my future clear in front of me. It was an uncertain period for me and my family. They were asking me, now what? But it didn't mean that I was falling off the face of the earth. It just meant that I'm strategically retreating to gather strength in order to charge again. As I have warned, whatever people may say, it would be ill-advised to write me off, at least not at this stage. Perhaps if I was in my late 60s, in my 70s, it would be okay, but at this stage, don't do it. What does the future look like? I don't know. Members of the ANC will decide what happens to the future. I'm not the only person whose future concerns the members of the ANC. There's a whole lot of us who have been trained and groomed from my generation. We are there's a collective of us who are stepping up together at the same time, and we have responsibilities to fulfill in our society in any possible way.
And I wanted to ask you this question before the break, but I'll ask you now. The state of the ANC Youth League at present, the woes that are characterizing the Youth League at the moment, how would you best advise the leadership to deal with that? Not just the leadership, but the young lions themselves to kind of sort this out, because this is the leadership that we speak of when we talk of a future South Africa going forward.
Absolutely. The ANC Youth League is the future. It's the insurance policy of the ANC. Without the ANC Youth League, the ANC's future is doomed, because ultimately there will come a time when all our elders in this house pass on, and I think I've made a serious omission here. I need to pause to pay tribute to Ubabu Andrew Mlangeni, who passed on today, to wish his family strength and comfort during this difficult time, and to pray that his soul rests in peace. He served South Africa in an extraordinary manner, and for that we are grateful. We wish to walk in their footsteps. We don't know if we are worthy to even walk in their footsteps, but we will do our best. But let me say, coming back to the ANC Youth League, that preoccupation with the questions of the future places the youth at the very heart of every nation's endeavor. Because all societies are worried about what their outlook, how their future will be achieved, what it will look like, and which social forces will be mobilized in pursuit of that future. And so the youth become an important cog in any nation. The ANC Youth League plays that role, not only in relation to the ANC, but also in relation to society. If you look at it, we have produced the leadership that our society has really looked up to, in the form of Mandelas, the Sisulus, the Tambos, the Mbegis, the Zumas. They've led our society very well. And I think we need the ANC Youth League to continue playing that role, not only in relation to the ANC, but it must cast its long eyes on South Africa and the type of society we want. The ANC Youth League, not only must it breed the leadership our society needs, it must also produce the ideas that are going to make South Africa a better society. Let me argue that South Africa still has to accomplish the decolonization project. And that decolonization requires that we reconfigure property relations. It requires that we place black people at the heart of the South African economy through land expropriation, through radical economic transformation, changing the structures of production of our economy, changing the institutions and the systems that govern economic activity in South Africa. And it must spearhead the program to ensure that black people do not continue to become perpetual junior partners in the economy. One of the biggest mistakes we have made is to accept the notion that black people are junior partners in the economy. And every radical demand that black people place in relation to the economy gets interpreted as a threat to the stability of the economy and the attractiveness of the South African economy to investors. It cannot be. when the Natives Land Act was implemented in 1913, it destabilized South African society in ways that were debilitating. But if we implement land expropriation, it will cause a disruption, yes. There is no revolution that doesn't cause a disruption. If you think you are going to revolutionize society, especially at an economic level and social level, without causing a disruption, you are dreaming. So the type of disruption we are talking about is a constructive, progressive disruption which takes society forward, which expands the ownership of the means of production, which asserts the rights of the dispossessed to ownership of productive assets, so that both domestically and internationally, our country and our people do not continue to be viewed as junior partners. We have a right to equality, to genuine equality, and that right cannot be it cannot be frustrated by anybody, and certainly it must not be frustrated by our own mindsets. So black people have got to liberate their own mindsets, to believe in themselves, to believe in one another, to affirm one another. Not only must we end there, we must then extend that type of mentality to African society as a whole on the African continent. African countries must be encouraged to prefer to trade with one another, to do business with one another. Because what we do at the present moment, we all prefer to do business with Asia, to do business with Europe, to do business with North America. But how much business are we doing with one another? We can't trade in primary commodities with one another because all of us are producers of primary commodities. We need to add value on these primary commodities and to trade with one another on each other's strengths, be it food or minerals, so that we are able to grow together, to do the business together, and take our continent forward.
I think on that note, you are leading the conversation into radical economic transformation. Black industrialization is a big theme in the policy documents of RET. When you look at where we are as a country today in 2020 and our record and the report of South Africa being the most unequal society in the world, I draw your attention back to Mosebenzi Zwane's mining charter, not his mining charter, perhaps the Department of Mineral Resources mining charter. Do you think you are making headway as a party on radical economic transformation?
I think that in terms of the transformation of our economy, we really have struggled to make headways. I think, among others, the problem lies or lay in us accepting. Perhaps we didn't fight hard enough for the removal of the or for the non-insertion of the property clause and the sunset compromises insofar as the economy was concerned during negotiations. That has created a situation in which the economy of the country remains in the hands of a racial male minority, and that minority has not only consolidated their stranglehold over the economy and grown more wealthy during the democratic dispensation, they've also developed a political appetite to now rule directly as a ruling class, either through the mechanism of the ANC or through creating alternatives to the African National Congress if they view the ANC as an impediment to their economic ambitions. They have the advantage of having alliances in the global capitals, in the imperialist countries, in the multinational companies, in the international multilateral development banks, the Bretton Woods institutions, that gives them enormous power because it means they have command over capital that they can use to incentivize the country to move in a particular direction, or to penalize it if it takes a direction which they are opposed to. So we've not made sufficient ground. In actual fact, there's a number of decisions that we need to take that were a step backward even from what the apartheid government was doing. Because I think the edge on our part to be viewed as economic modernists has created a situation where in pursuing those commendations or those positive reviews in the international economic front, we have neglected what we need to do. For example, to build and harness domestic capital in order to industrialize our society and create capacity to make black people owners of productive assets. When the Nationalist Party gained power in 1948, they did so on the back of an Afrikaner economic movement which had started way back in the late 1910s, from around 1918 moving forward. And that economic movement had established Afrikaners in the land and property sphere, in the industrial sphere, in the financial sphere, in the retail sphere, and created skills among them by establishing universities whose only job was to churn out Afrikaner intellectuals and petty bourgeoisie. Now, unfortunately, and therefore the political appetite that led to 1948 only developed at the beginning of the 1930s until it gained fruition. It culminated to the political victory of 1948. With us, we gained political power before economic power, but we've not sufficiently utilized that economic power in order to transform society. The Sovereign Wealth Fund is not there. We've spoken about it. It's not there. Even the mandate of the central bank, we decided to narrow it to price stability instead of extending it to also cover the aspect of job creation and economic growth. Even under apartheid, the central bank had a dual mandate, but under democracy, it had a single mandate. And there's a number of other decisions that we need to take that are going, that must transform economic ownership. I think the biggest challenge for the ANC is to defeat the mindset in itself that seems to suggest that the economic aspirations of the black majority are a threat to the stability of the economy. In actual fact, it is the economic marginalization of the black majority that threatens the sustainable future of this country, because if one day, if we continue to allow unemployment to be at this rate it is at the present moment, one day you will have an unemployment must fall movement, which will far eclipse the fees must fall and roads must fall movement, because the overwhelming majority of the South African youth will be involved in that effort. The ANC must answer this problem in a meaningful way before it becomes a problem that is going to answer the ANC.
The ANC didn't answer this problem 2 months ago when it was in consultations with the Bretton Woods institutions you're talking about. You were a part of BRICS as a finance minister. We are the S in the BRICS. And in our attempt to borrow money for the social relief under the coronavirus, novel coronavirus pandemic, the ANC government did not consult its BRICS partner countries. It went to the Bretton Woods institutions that give African countries a higher interest than countries in the West, and you consulted and borrowed money from the World Bank and the IMF. So here we're saying the African National Congress is a nationalist party and the ANC should do this and that, but 27 years almost into democracy, the ANC of today still snubs the East and goes and borrows money from its colonial countries. How do we reconcile that?
You know, the dynamics of the coronavirus and, or let me say, the challenges of the coronavirus and the devastation it has caused in the economies of many countries has created an urgency to try and find money to respond to the challenges that the people are facing. And unfortunately, there cannot be, because nobody had planned for this, there cannot be the best mechanism, especially for countries that find themselves having not had the deep pockets that maybe other countries in the north had. But in a country like South Africa, where even our domestic savings were not sufficient, where the budget was already constrained and facing a severe constraint which had been undergoing fiscal consolidation for over a decade. You had this dilemma that we need money now to do certain things. And where do we get that money? Who is giving us affordable borrowing rates, that interest rates that can be affordable to the economy? The South African Reserve Bank had tried to play its own part, reducing interest rates and implementing some policies that would assist to release money into the economy. Of course, they could have done more and better. I think we should believe so. They could have done more and better. Of course, we could, perhaps if we had sufficient time, looked at other options. But from my understanding, when the National Treasury and government were looking at who had better interests on loans among various available entities, they thought that the World Bank and the IMF had more affordable. The risk of of increasing the dollar-denominated debt is enormous. The risk of increasing the dollar-denominated debt is enormous, and this debt will be borne by generations to come, and obviously it creates enormous challenges for the stability of the economy as it exposes us to foreign exchange. And to the need for us to because the dollar-denominated debt must be paid back in dollars. It can't be paid back in rand. It means that we need to earn a foreign currency. To do that, there's a number of things that we will have to do, which are going to be quite difficult for the economy, including, among others, which would raise challenges to some of the transformative policies that we have, and weaken the national sovereignty of the country. But we are seized with all of those issues on an ongoing basis. I think the release of the economic recovery program that was released by the NEC through Comrade Enoch Godongwana is an attempt for us to claw back on some of the challenges of the economy domestically by increasing investments in infrastructure, mobilizing private capital to also invest in infrastructure, and to use those infrastructure investments as a lever to industrialize the South African economy, to increase the domestic, what to call, to increase local procurement, so that we encourage the development of local suppliers in the upstream and the downstream of the economy. And so we should continue trying to do that at the same time as the South African Reserve Bank should continue to increase. I think the ANC cannot avoid looking at the mandate of the central bank. It must not avoid looking at the mandate of the central bank, given the high rates of unemployment. I mean, it's expected that about 50, if not more, % South Africans will be unemployed by the time COVID subsides. And already, many South Africans, even those who claim to be employed, are either not earning their wages and incomes, or their incomes have been cut, some by as much as 75%.
Yeah, precisely. As we wrap up, we're actually running out of time. Just my final question to you, Mr. Gigaba, 2021 local government elections. With all these issues that you have, that you've pointed out, you know, the economy that is bleeding, unemployment, the youth at some point are going to rise up. They're not happy. We saw what happened in the previous elections. How does the ANC claw back to its position of being able to get back, you know, the municipalities that it lost, especially with all these issues that you speak of? At the end of the day, people are worried about bread and butter issues. All this verbiage that we speak about the economy, they don't really, you know, it's for middle class people who perhaps understand that, but people on grassroots levels just want to be able to survive. They haven't been able to do that. The ANC has been punished before by the electorate in the past. What do you think is going to happen next year?
Look, we are going to have a difficult election. I don't think it's the ANC only that's going to face these difficulties. All political parties are going to face these difficulties. In the context of an economic downturn of the size of ours, inevitably many conventional political organizations do suffer. There is a lot of voter apathy which arises, and also, as we have seen in Europe, a lot of political populist parties do emerge, and that causes difficult challenges for conventional political parties. So next year's elections are going to be difficult. The ANC, I expect the ANC to remain dominant, but it's going to have to fight very hard. And one of the things we will need to address is the unity of the ANC. We stand a much better chance of winning the elections if the ANC is united. And that unity must be based not just on gentlemen's agreements among ourselves. It must be based on the fundamental, genuine socio-economic aspirations of the black majority, which means that all our focus in government, in how we're implementing COVID interventions and the economic recovery plan, we need to think about the genuine socio-economic aspirations of the black majority, and address ourselves to those, because it's the only way that people are going to see how genuine we are about their plight.
Sfiso, any closing remarks?
Perhaps a remark on blackness in the era of 2020. We're often reminded, we see scenes in Cape Town, and you and I have seen this, Audrey, Mr. Gigaba, of a black man taken out of a shack naked and arrested violently because they call it land grabs. Solidarity is building a whites-only university in Pretoria in 2020 under the ANC government in the capital city, I add. Orania is a whites-only place, whites-only village in South Africa. They have their own economy. Blacks are not allowed. When you reflect the ANC of the struggle, and the promises of that NEC of Mandela. Are you happy with the visuals you see with regard to blackness today?
Look, these are not just problems of the ANC. I think they become problems of the ANC to the extent that the ANC leads society, and it needs to lead a response to this and be proactive in that regard. I think black people are very divided. We are extremely divided. We are the only divided because white people are united behind their aspirations, and they are united around viewing us as a threat to those aspirations. The old native problem remains there. And so, you know, we need to unite black people behind their socio-economic aspirations. And I insist on this because this unity must not be mechanical. It must be a meaningful unity that is based on us fulfilling the social and economic interests of the people who fought for freedom, because we cannot continue to be treated as outcasts, as hated, defiled people in our own country of birth. And so there is a need for us to reassert our blackness, of course in a progressive way. It's not a blackness, it's not a black consciousness or an African nationalism or a Pan-Africanism which is exclusive of white people or which chases them away, but it must be based, it must be a national consciousness that is based on first affirming our legitimate rights to ownership of productive assets in our country. Anything other than that is a farce. As I have said, the biggest mistake we have made over the last 25 years or more is to delegitimize the genuine economic interests of the black majority and to define them in a subservient manner as if they are a threat to the stability of the economy. The economic aspirations of our people are not a threat to this economy, and what we need to do is to affirm them decisively in every aspect of our lives, not only in the industrial and agricultural and land areas, but at every level of the South African economy, so that we stop pursuing a narrow equity-based black economic empowerment. Our people must now outgrow. The ANC needs to have a plan like the Chinese do, that in the next 5 years, so much money, I'm talking about liquid money, must go into black hands, and that much money must amount to such a percentage of the South African economy. In the next 10 years, we want to have achieved this level without us setting ourselves these hard targets about the transfer of wealth to black hands. We're going to continue having black people chasing 26% equity shares in white companies which were not established for our empowerment.
Okay.
Well, I suppose we'll have to leave it there with that parting shot. Thank you so much for speaking to us, Mr. Malusi Gigaba. We certainly appreciate it. We're supposed to speak to you for an hour. It's almost an hour and a half. I suppose that's what happens when people are having a good time. A lot of reaction coming on social media.
Responses.
Oh, no. It's absolutely, we absolutely enjoyed it. We'll have to leave it there. That's our conversation there with Mr. Malusi Gigaba. A huge thank you to you, Sfiso, as well, for joining me and being my co-pilot today.
All right, good to be here.
Yes.
Some really insightful views that have come out of this particular conversation, but it's clear that Mr. Malusi Gigaba doesn't want to disappear from the face of the earth or from the face of the ANC. So it promises to be a vibrant economic climate in South Africa, albeit I think all of us need to confront a lot of the issues that came out of this discussion. And it's going to be issues that you and I conversation indeed. You've got
Absolutely.
been a great host yourself.
Yes, why thank you very much. And for you at home for being a part of the conversation, we certainly appreciate it. We saw your comments coming in, and you've been a part of this conversation, being a part of the family of Galaxy Universal Network. We cannot do it without you. We'll have to say good night for now.